One quick question. On Ukraine, you mentioned that some of the areas are already decimated. Do you believe that Ukraine should cede territory to Russia?
Well, I'm going to let you know that after I have my first meeting. But a lot of that territory, when you look at what's happened to those, I mean, there are cities that there's not a building standing. It's a demolition site. There's not a building standing. So people can't go back to those cities. There's nothing there. It's just rubble. Just like when I knocked down a building in Manhattan, which is actually, this is worse, actually, because we do it step by step. This thing has just got demolished. And by the way, in those buildings are many people. Many people were in those buildings. You know, when they say the number in Ukraine is going to be a much higher number of death, is going to be a much higher number than you're hearing. You know, they're big buildings. That's what I did very well. And these are very long buildings. They're 15 to 20 stories high. They're massive buildings. I was surprised at how big. And they're flattened like a pancake. 1 or 2 bombs hit them and they just collapse. And they'd say, nobody was hurt. Well, nobody knows who was in those buildings. There were a lot of people in those buildings. They're going to find that when they start doing the removal. Many more people are being killed in the Ukraine war with Russia than is being reported, and that includes soldiers. The soldiers are being, it's a carnage that we haven't seen since the Second World War. It's got to be stopped. And I'm doing my best to stop it. You know, because China and the United States can together solve all of the problems of the world, if you think about it. So it's very important. And, you know, he was a friend of mine. I mean, he was here for a long time, right in that spot, except sitting in a very comfortable chair. He wasn't standing like you are. But we spent hours and hours talking. And, you know, he's an amazing guy.
Have you spoken to Venezuela?
The press hates when I say that, but he's an amazing person.
Did you get to a good spot?
Back on Ukraine, Mr. President. What should Zelensky, if anything, be prepared to give up to end this war?
He should be prepared to make a deal. That's all. Got to be a deal. No, got to be a deal. Too many people being killed. That is a war that's hard. Too many people. Got to make a deal. And Putin has to make a deal too.
What deal?
Do you think?
Putin has to make a deal, and Putin would have never gone in if I was president. If I was president, we wouldn't have had inflation. Our oil prices would have been lower. I had a good relationship with Putin. He would, despite the Russia hoax, which made it more difficult. If we had that election, if it were an honorable election, we wouldn't have had any of the problems that we're talking about right now. Putin would have never got in.
Based on your understanding, you said that you could make that deal before you take office. Do you still think you could make that deal?
I'm going to try.